Hello, welcome to Nezzo's Bad Shop. I'm your host, Nezzo, and this video is me building a set of Overdose HG Spec 3 aluminum shocks in purple. Uh, and yeah, so that's these ones. It's OD3441, part number there. So we're going to get into this, and I've already built three of them, and that was off camera. And I wanted to do that just so I had an idea of what I was doing and make sure I was doing it correctly and following all the instructions. So here's my Overdose GALM that you've seen in some of the other videos. And besides the shocks, I've added purple battery mounts, which are really nice. I'll show that off later, but yes, I already mounted the three shocks, one of them up front and the other two in the back of the car. And they look beautiful in purple. And I've also paired it with the Overdose twin spring. This is the purple one, and those do not come with the shocks, so I have added those in myself. Yeah, the shock, there's the instructions. All the pieces that it comes with, it shows illustrated here, except for here. Spring don't come with this set, it says right here. Okay, but everything else you see there does come with it, except for the ball studs, which should be on the car. They are 4.8 mil spec. Yeah, and away we go. So couple neat features. These are 6-hole piston shocks. They have kind of like how should I word this? The way the shocks tighten and cap off, the cap is separate from the top hat cover, which on a lot of other shocks, it's a combination of a plastic top hat piece, the top of the shock cover, and then you screw it down and those sort of combine. But in this case, it's a separate piece that seals the shock oil in, and then the top hat piece, this is adjustable, so you can screw it up and down the body of the shock off the top side and adjust the height of your shock as it illustrates here. So very cool, very nice. I have many friends out in the RC world there that have the Spec 1 and 2. A lot of people are running the Spec 2 currently. I thought these shocks released like fairly recently, but I did some research and found that these shocks have been on the market for a little bit of time. I think about a year or two now, probably about 2 years, as I'd seen videos from that far back. And I don't think there's been any revision since then. It's been the same packaging and all that stuff. So we're going to get started and do the fourth shock, and all the pieces are right here. And as you can see, I've laid them all out, right? Very nice in purple. And we're going to go step by step and make sure we use all of these parts and pieces, and away we go. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that in step 1 here we push part 8 into part 3. So part 8 is this part right here. That's that part right there. This one right here, and there's a lip on the other side of it, so you can see that it does have a little lip there, and that is going to get pressed into this part. Okay, and you can do that. The instructions illustrate to do that using the shock shaft and part number 18, which is the where is it? The black spacer. Okay, so we'll use the shock shaft itself, shock shaft there, and that black spacer right there. There is one other spacer right beside it, a silver one. We'll use that later, okay? So this is a fairly simple process. What we're going to do here, take our shock shaft and our black spacer. We'll take this piece, which has the groove on it. The underside is grooved. You can see that there. See? Okay. And we're going to press it into the bottom of this piece, so that lip there will sit flush in the bottom of there. Pretty straightforward process. This is how I did it. Put it right over top, and see how it's going in on an angle there. Just get it in nice and straight, and it should plop right in. What you'll want to do is what the instruction says. You'll want to get it so there's a little bit of a click. So if we just kind of wiggle this here and get it a bit straight, click, there we go. I get a little click noise. Then you should see that is flush. There we go now. The camera doesn't want to focus, but yeah, that is flush. See it there? And once you're done with that, you can pop that out, and then we have that in place, okay? And then after that, what I did is took the red O-ring, this one, okay, and this goes around the outside of here, because this is the seal for the bottom side of the shock. And this is fairly simple. You just kind of roll it over with your fingers and thumbs, and oh, there we go. Just rolled it over, and that seal sits in there just like that. Okay, and that will seal the bottom of the shock, so that's the next thing I did. After that, it wants you to put in the rubber O-ring, which is this part, and it does have a little lip on the inside of it. You can just see it there, a little lip on it. Okay, and so that will go in next, and then that's followed on top by this white piece here. This piece, which also has a lip on it, and that goes on the bottom side. That will cap this part. It'll go like, it'll sit like this essentially. Okay, but before we do that, I want to prepare the piston, because what I'm going to do is when that O-ring's in there, they want you to put the O-ring in first, but I'm going to lube up the O-ring so that we can put it in all together. So instead of putting that all in direct, we're going to put it in on the shock shaft, kind of like this, but I'm going to put the white piece on and then the O-ring so I can get the O-ring over those threads nice and gently, not to cut the O-ring. So we'll move on to the shock shaft, which is step 2 here, right here. And what they want is we take the shock shaft part number 14, the spacer, which is part number 18, that's the black spacer. Then we put the piston, the shock piston, then part number 19, which is the silver washer, spacer, washer, whatever you call it. And then 17 is the button head screw, and the button head ones are the rounded. So out of these 2 screws here on my tray, this one has a flat edge, that's a flat head, not a button head, and the button head there is more rounded. If you can see it there, it's a little more rounded. Okay, so what we're gonna do then, take the shock shaft, and it already has a black spacer on it from me pressing in that previous part. Okay, then we're gonna take the piston, pop it on. The tolerance is very fine, so just be gentle, pop it in there. Yeah, the tolerances are nice and fine. That sits on there very nice and tight. And you'll see it like that, and there'll be a tiny little protruding bit of the shock shaft out the top of the shaft there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take the button head screw. What I did was I popped it onto my it's a 1.5 mil, so I popped it onto the screwdriver first, took my spacer, okay, there's my spacer, and I put it on the screw, so it's sitting on the screw. Then I took the shock shaft, which has the threads right inside the hole there, okay, line it up nice, be very careful, and screw it down. Okay, you can get it pretty much finger tight with your fingers. That would be decent, but if you want just peace of mind to have a little bit of torque on it, which you don't need a ton, you can use the shock shaft pliers or cloth with a pair of pliers, but these are ideal shock shaft pliers, especially when we're dealing with high-end stuff like this. And clamp the shaft and just give a little torque, a little torquing, and we're done. Yes, we're good. Everything is good. Okay, so there's the shock shaft and piston assembled. 6 holes there, as you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we have our black spacer on the bottom and the silver spacer on the top there. Focus, there we go. Okay, so that's built now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the body ready here so we can see that the non-threaded part is at the bottom side. Okay, and then we're gonna have to put our white spacer. So I'm gonna do it like this. So here's a shock shaft. Put the white spacer for the bottom of the bottom seal, this part. Okay, put that on first. Then I'm gonna take, get a little Kleenex going here. Get our Overdose shock oil. And it also, I must stress that the shock kit here does not come with oil, so you'll have to get oil on top of it. I chose Overdose's number 15 mineral shock oil. Number 10 was sold out when I went to get it. But basically here, I'm going to take my O-ring, okay? Take my O-ring, and I'm going to soak it with the mineral oil, both inside, and let it flow around it a little bit. There we go. And then just get rid of the excess. But what this does is it sort of pre-lubricates the O-ring so that when you put it on your shock shaft, here we go now, see the threads there? What I'm preventing by doing this, sticking the O-ring over the threads with them already lubed up, allow me to slide them over the threads nicely so that I don't cut that O-ring in any way. If I did that, say if I had put the O-ring inside of that hole first and then put the shock shaft through it, it's a higher risk of me kind of cutting the O-ring because the O-ring can't go around those threads easier. So it's kind of like not so much squished in there, but there's a higher chance of the O-ring being cut. So once that's been lubed up, and we can put this, we can install this piece just like we saw before, because we had completed most of that assembly. So the O-ring will go inside of there. As you can see, it's going right in. Okay, and as that goes in, the cover will just sit nicely on top there. So you should have it looking like this. The bottom the bottom part of the shock, the bottom cap, I guess we'll call it. They have a different name for it. But yeah, so that, the red O-ring, and then we have our white piece, which we put in first, then the O-ring, and then the top white piece, and that will be ready to install into the shock body. Okay, so that's step 3. Step 3 is installing it into the shock body, and all we're going to do is make sure you have the non-threaded side on the bottom. Put the shock shaft into the bottom. You won't be able to get it into the top because the top has a lip there, partially way in, so just feed it in nicely. Make sure that cap doesn't fall off. And get it in there. There we go. Hear that. And then just lightly spin it. Make sure you got on the threads. You may have to push the bottom cap inward a little bit. There we go. Now you'll get to this point and your hands may start slipping. As you can see, they're slipping on mine because I got some oil there. Overdose provides you this lovely little wrench that you can use, that they tell you to use in the instruction manual here in step 3 to tighten that bottom nut. Now you don't have to refit, but you just get the little wrench on it here. Look at that. And then just slowly tighten it up. Oh, wrong way. Just go nice and easy. One more. Nice. Stops. Little torque. We're good. Nice, nice. Yep, and that's that. Okay, so with that, should have nice smooth shaft action now. Yes, we do. Pre-lubricated from installing the O-ring. Now, after that, the last part of step 3 is to install the plastic ball cup at the bottom of the shock. This is where the shock shaft pliers come in super handy. Clamp it down. Okay. Clamped it in the 3.0 position. Hold it good. And we can spin this on by hand. The tolerances are actually pretty nice. I have a little tool for this from 3 Racing. But we can use our hand here because it's not super stiff actually. It's pretty nice. Oh, hit the camera. That's what? In iRacing, that's like a 1 or 2x. For all the people, my buddies playing iRacing. Okay, so there we go. So we have nice shock shaft movement. Nice ball cup that says OD on it. Overdose. Okay, so that's pretty much good to go. Now, I'm just going to make sure I get that ball cup all the way to the end of the shaft. There we go. So just a little lip there I wanted to cover at the end of the shaft to make sure I got that. All right, so that's good. That is ready for oil. So you see that lip? See, there's the piston. You see that lip? That's what I was saying. You won't be able to get the piston in the other way if you try to have the body flipped. It just simply won't go in. So that's that. Very nice. Okay, that's ready for oil. And yeah, I've done all the other 3 shocks. So it's just this one we're going to put oil in. Now, in the instructions, and actually to make my life a little easier here, we're going to jump ahead before we put oil in it, because I need to use my little holder here. So, we're going to prep the spring collar a little ahead of time. Now, this is straightforward. We'll just take our, they call it a cap head, but it's basically like a flat head or whatever. So, put it on your 1.5 mil, screw it into the shock collar, the spring preload collar. Now for this part, they stress, make sure you leave this very light. So I'm not even tightening this. As you can see here, I'm going in to feel like a bit of tightness and then backing off like 2.5 turns. Make sure you do that when you screw it on so that this part screws on nicely. Otherwise, it won't go on nice, or it could gouge the body. And in the instructions, they illustrate showing this going that way, as in that unthreaded side going through. That doesn't really work. So I tried it. Go like this. Go from the top side. And since we're doing this ahead of time, it'll make life easier down the road. Screw it on. See, mine screwed on nice and easy here. Pretty loose, actually. I can almost flick it. There we go. Whee! There we go. Put it about, I don't know, some far about there down. That'll be good. When you do that, at least if you have one of these holders, then it'll sit nicely in the holder. That will be ideal. And then it makes life easier to put oil in it, bleed it, all that kind of stuff, and so on and so forth. We'll come back to that collar and the screw, because it's very important. And Nezzo's bad nose is already starting to fail me, and I may have to turn off camera and blow my nose, which I hate doing. But we'll press on. So those of you who's keeping track, it's already failing 15 minutes into the video. Better than 10. Okay, so at this point, yeah, we are ready for oil. We can do that now. So let's move those few things. So what we're going to need for this part is we're going to have to use this this little rubber bladder here, which does say OD in it inside of it. Overdose. And this part, this is the top cap of the shock, okay? Because there's no hole in it. The other one looks similar to this and has a hole, but I'll tell you now, I don't know why they did this. This beautiful little wrench, it only works on the bottom side, because on the top side is loose. Why? I don't know why they did that, but regardless, you can pretty much just finger tighten it, or I ended up using the section of my pliers here, this little section, just to hold and just give it a little torque on that little nut, so that will work as well. Now, we're going to fill it with oil and then bleed it. So here, I'm just going to pour oil into it, as you can see. Oops, oil going in. And you can put oil past the little lip part. That's okay, because when you bleed it, here, we're going to bleed it here. When you bleed it, here we go, we're going up. That's all the way top. When you go down, you're going to see lots of bubbles. There we go. Lots of bubbles popping up there. That's normal. This is all the oil flowing through the piston, flowing down into that bottom O-ring. You're going to want to move the shock shaft up and down several times, as you can see here. Hold on, I'll hold this a bit differently. There we go. So you want to do this up and down, up and down. Move it up and down several times, but slowly. Don't go fast. Go really slowly, because if you go fast, it'll create too much of a suction and you'll send oil everywhere. So this is good. Getting lots of bubbles out. Got to get that oil flowing all through the bottom end of the shock. Perfect. So yeah, a good amount of bubbles coming up still. This is normal. I've noticed with mineral oil that the bubbles stay a little longer, so we'll let that sit there for a minute or two. And just lightly blow my nose. Excuse me. It never fails, my nose. It always it provides entertainment and annoyance. Okay, so lots of bubbles. We have to let that sit for a teeny bit, but that's okay. There are ways to speed up the process if you don't have a vacuum pump for RC shocks. I have one. I don't know where it went, but generally I never use it. But there are a couple ways to kind of cheat and get rid of the bubbles. And I'll show you that in a sec. So we'll let that sit there and do its bubbly thing, get rid of those bubbles. In the meantime, we can prepare the top hat shock here. This piece, look at beautiful. It says Overdose on it. Lovely. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take this black O-ring. This is gonna fit into this lip right here. So you see, I might have to get slightly better lighting or research a better camera angle. That little lip in there, yeah, that little lip right there, that's where that O-ring will go. Okay, it's illustrated here. That O-ring goes right into the top cap, but they don't really show exactly where, but it's right, yeah, right in there. So this is straightforward. Just take your time, feed the O-ring in, say, halfway, kind of like this. See if you can feed it into the little lip in there. Come on. Come on. Come on. Feel like Happy Gilmore. That's your home. Don't you want to go into your home? Answer me. Oh. Sometimes the ring will flop and go down below into the cap. That's okay. Just position it, just wobble it around, wobble your camera to... I know these got a little bit goofy sometimes. There we go. Got it. Here we go. Yep. So it just kind of pop it in there. Once you get like one side in, then it'll kind of pop into place. See, now you can see right there. See that black line in there? That's the O-ring. So now that creates our seal for the top cap to prevent the top cap spinning excessively, and gives it a little bit of resistance so it'll stay in place. That's done. Okay. Now that we've done that, let's check on our bubbles. Just like in Finding Nemo, bubbles, bubbles, bubbles. My bubbles. You know, what's the quote? Fish weren't meant to stay in a box, kid. It does things to you. Yeah, well, bubbles weren't meant to stay in shocks. It does things to them. So we'll just do a couple more pumps here after that oil has flowed around. Most of the bubbles have gone. There's a couple little residual bubbles floating around. Now, a couple things you can do. If you got bubbles at the top that won't go away, you can take Kleenex or cloth or whatever and lightly dab the oil. That's one way to do it. I saw someone else even take a screwdriver and stab it. What I did earlier to quick speed up and get rid of some of these bubbles, I just took the oil, the bottle, which I'm going to have to put a little bit more oil back in anyway, and just lightly, without putting any oil, just sort of dabbed the top of the shock here. And that, for the most part, got rid of most of the bubbles, weirdly, because you're tapping it in, you're kind of replacing the oil. But you see from the nozzle there, I'm not actually putting oil in it. I'm just kind of just touching the oil, and that worked. That's kind of a quick way if you kind of want to, or if you want to just, you know, redo your shocks quick, do some tests, some science or whatever, and just get her going. Some people like to spend more time, let the shocks sit more, let them really, or do a big vacuum pump and let them sit for 10 minutes, half an hour, or an hour. You can totally do that. There's nothing against that. It's all personal preference. So, yeah, so now I got rid of most of those bubbles. I'm going to go ahead, and this is what I found seems to work the best with these shocks oil-wise. Topped up the oil pretty much to the tippy top, just before the top of the shock body there. And this is where the oil will flow out of the top of the shock and flow over, but it's okay, don't worry, because you can just mop it up, and there's not that much to go around all over the place anyway. So we're going to take our seal, take the seal, drop it in, make sure it drops in fairly straight, okay? You can even press it with your finger. A little bit of oil might start popping out, oil on the finger, no big deal. Make sure you have some Kleenex or cloth handy, especially for your nose, and you can see the oil's starting to pop out already, but it's okay because this piece has a little guide, a little lip as well. That will keep the O-ring in the right spot, and all you have to do is put the cap straight up. So I'm going to bring this closer to the camera, and we're going to do this. All right, here we go. And dropping on. Just try to get it straight. Don't worry about the oil. Press it down. Use your best judgment. See if you can get the threads in there. Oh, I got the threads. Perfect. Just take your time. Now you see all the oil flowing out around my fingers? Don't worry. So I tried at this point just to spin the cap as far down as I can get it, like with my oily fingers. Then I took my Kleenex, wiped around the excess, because that's going to happen. I'm going to see some Kleenex fibers there. But with the Kleenex, I then gripped the nut and just finger tightened it down. Make sure you don't get the Kleenex trapped. Just gave it just close to the finger tight, just so I could get that's the oil that's all bled out now, for the most part. See, look, no big deal. Oil's sopped up from our Kleenex. And just to make sure the cap is tight, I took that part of my pliers and just get it onto the lip of the nut there, and just a little crank, and that is tight. Not super tight, just kind of like, you know, snug, nice and snug. You don't have to crank this down. And with that, the shock is filled. And let's see how the damping is going. This will vary, and if you don't have good rebound, so let's see how this went. Oh, it's getting there. What's that? 3/4 extension. So that happens. That's not too bad, actually. I had various results by filling them at the top like that. So if you have this problem, let's see. Well, it's going out pretty much almost all the way. By the time it gets out to the bottom, it's a little but that's just because of the amount of oil that came out of there. I was a little slow in kind of moved it around a teeny bit, so I may have popped out a little bit too much oil, but this looks all right actually for the most part. It's pretty much going out all the way. This is number 15 out of the number 15 oil. So I'm happy with that for now. I can make that more more precise, more perfect if I do it again and again and again. But generally that's pretty good. That's what we want. We don't want it to rebound like this, or basically when you push it in, you don't want it to sit there. That means there's not enough oil. If you push the piston in and it stops about here and is super stiff, you got too much oil in there, and usually it'll rebound kind of harshly. So this is nice, smooth rebound, and it's pretty much going all the way out. There we go. And another thing, if you push it in, or if you're pushing it back and forth and you feel a lot of sort of popping and fizzing inside, it means you get too many bubbles in there, and generally that means it won't come out all the way, or it'll come out and stop, come out and stop, come out and stop. This is giving us good rebound all the way out. Perfect. So if we get to this point, you're filled with oil, which is good. So we'll just make sure, let me clean off the oil, get rid of those Kleenex fibers. Excellent. So there we go. So we're at this point, the bottom sealed, the top sealed, all the oil's in it. Got good rebound. I like that. So I'm going to do some tuning at the track and maybe top up the oil at the track in a day or two. So that's good. Now, where are we now? Okay, so now we are gonna move properly on to the second section. We've done step 1 through 4 there. We're at that point, all the oil's in it. Now we can put on our top cap and then add the spring, which, I need to go get, actually. I left it on the other table. My last twin spring. So we'll get to that point, and then I'll go get it. And then we'll mount it on the car. All right, so here we go. Now this is like the nice part, because all you have to do here is we did the O-ring while waiting for the bubbles, right? And just be careful when you go to thread this on, nice and simply, and it'll thread on nice and loose until it touches that O-ring. Now I've got resistance. Now it's nice and stiff. And because that oil the oil overflowed into the threads, it lubricates that ring just a little bit, so there isn't super tight resistance. It's nice, actually. And what I did was, for now, let me just hold this up to the light, I adjusted the top hat so that the top of the adjuster nut was just about in line with these grooves here. So yeah, the top nut there is just about even with the bottom of that open groove, the bottom of right there. So just for now, that's where I put it. Yeah, so essentially that is the shock pretty much finished, and then we're going to add our spring. There's the bottom piece, okay? Let me go get the spring, because I totally left it over there. Un momento! Okay, Nuzzle's bad nose again strikes. So this is the stock aluminum shock, the one that came off the GALM version 2 Anti Plus, and I've already put the twin spring on that one, but it's coming off now. So I just compress the spring here and get the bottom collar off. Press that, bottom collar falls off. Put that in there. Here's the twin spring. So the twin spring, quick little brief on this. It's comprises of a mainspring, an aluminum collar, and a helper spring. And the idea is the helper spring always stays preloaded, but helps to add damping preload on the bottom spring before actual collar spring preload is applied. So pretty neat. And there's a couple different ways you can run these. People have put the helper springs on the bottom, on the top, and not at all. So it's pretty interesting. So in this case, I'm going to slip this set just like this, just like I've put it on the other shocks, onto my shock. This is straightforward. Make sure that that spring sits nicely there, and if you've got these, make sure it sits in that collar nicely, because there is a little lip. Bloop. And then, once you got it positioned, compress the spring down. See, we've got all this open shaft. We take our bottom retainer, spring retainer, slide it over the shaft. Make sure you put it all the way on the lower part of the bulk up like that, and let the spring down. There we go. And you'll notice that the spring here is pretty, yeah, right now it's loose because I don't have any tension on the preload collar. And for the car, what I did for preload was I did about 6 millimeters of preload, This is just for sort of the bench. I may change this at the track, but this was just so that I had, here, I'll measure it from the bottom part of that cap up to there. It's at 6.95. That's too many. I wanted 6. 581. This was just so I had tension on the spring before, whoops, before I even put it on the car. What's that, 6.05? Let's go a little back. Oh, wrong way. You think I know what I'd be doing by now. 595. Yeah, good enough. I'll make it more precise at the track. But anyways, so now you can see the spring, there's no longer looseness and the spring is loaded. And yeah, that's pretty neat. So you see how when the shock compresses, the helper spring compresses first, preloads the spring, and then the spring starts compressing. It's kind of neat. I'm gonna have to do a feature on that separately. But anyways, that is the shock assembled, and we're good to go. We're good to mount it on the car. So there's only 2 more pieces for this, and that comprises of these 2 little gray guys right here. What do they call this? 15 and 15. Do they have an actual? I'm just reading it. No, I can't read it. It's in Japanese. My Japanese is very rusty. I barely know any. But yes, so these are the pieces that allow you to mount the shock to the ball stud, because the hole here is quite large. But the tolerances and the fitment is very nice. So these 2 pieces have 2 little studs on them on each side, one on each side, and they're easy to sort of clip and sort of not say they won't clip or like stay together, but it's easy to line them up like this. So you pretty much just line them up like that, take your shock, feed them into the hole, and with a little bit of a push, not hard, as you can see, it goes right in, okay? And you'll want to make sure that it goes all the way in, so you have a groove here that you can stick your thumbnail in, kind of like that. That's very important, because this little locking clip guy, which I lost earlier and found, he slides on over into that groove to lock this in place, keep it locked in place, held in place. So yeah, that's very important. I'll move this shock and its thing out of the way. Get on there, you. Okay, so I can show you front of the car here. So there's the piece and the little retaining clip. There's the clip on it, because you can't see the clip sort of on the bottom side there. That's what holds it in place. And I found that you can actually push this clip on with your fingers, so you can just kind of push and get it on. I'm going to illustrate that momentarily. Don't use pliers. I did, and I put a little mark. Just don't look at that. Just don't look at it. Don't do my mistake. But anyways, okay, so there's our part with no shock, our front suspension. Okay, so I'm going to, the tolerance on these ball cups are really, really nice, and they've engineered them in such a way that you can pretty much just do them with your fingers, so I like that. This ball cup here, just like the ones in the rest of the car, they're one side is larger than the other. So see that hole, that side's larger than that hole. So if I take this side onto the ball stud here, and literally take my just my thumb, press it on, perfect. So that's already on. Okay, now for the top here, line the shock up nice. Okay, and onto the ball stud. Now you got to give this a bit more of a press than the other one, but it will go on. So I'm going to press both here and at the shock. Ready? Bang. See? Done. So that goes on nice and firm. The tolerances are good and it looks good. Then we take the retaining clip, okay, and you can preset it just like so. Now I'm going to bring this closer to the camera. Okay. So there we go. There's the clip. Okay. Now I can literally do this with my finger. Ready? Boom, there it is. It's done. It's already on. That's just like that. Just one good press and it's on. And that is mounted. And there we go. We are done. We can take a little look at the damping, because I'm kind of curious. Wait, let's fix the overdose there. Yeah, make turn them down a bit, because now I have way more ride height, which is really good. So I can actually illustrate this. Let me just move this. You're gonna hear a bunch of noises. There we go. Yeah, so if I modify this, there we go. So now I have more in terms of ride height. I can already see it. Yeah, way more than stock if you look at the video, the shakedown. So more ride height there. I can already see that. That's very good. Ride height out the rear. Very good. Oh yeah, that's nice. I'll try and make it a little softer at the track maybe. That feels good too. More suspension movement. I'm excited to drive this now. And yeah, the other thing I added was the battery holder there, and I can illustrate this very quickly. So it has a nice aluminum lock piece. Just flip that up. There it is. It's open. Close the door. Flip the lock. Done. It looks really nice. They do give you aluminum spacer piece if you have a standard size tall shorty battery, and you can use the plastic other piece or an aluminum. You can buy another piece in aluminum if you want to extend it out for a long battery, but I'm going to keep running shorty. Yeah, so other than that, that is the Overdose HG Spec 3 shock build and installation. And when you buy these shocks, you also get this wonderful nice Overdose little sort of keychainy wrench, which is very nice, worth its weight in myrrh. So there it is. If you've got these shocks, you've had them for a bit, done some tuning on them, let me know what you think of them. So far I like them. The fit finish is like just amazing. I love the color, love the way it looks on the car. Functionality, I got to learn them. I need to drive them, experience them, play with settings and this and that. The shock height, I've put the hat here kind of tall at first, so that's why I have more ride height, but I knew I would have more ride height regardless, because these shocks I believe are a little longer. I think the bodies are a little longer than the standard ones. So but yeah, let me know what you think, tuning wise, what you've done, if you've changed pistons or anything like that. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. If you've watched almost 38 minutes now of this production, hopefully that helps you building your shocks, whether you have the older version of the Overdose shocks. I think they're similar in terms of the build. I remember redoing a V1 HD V1 spec. I think I have an old set of shocks somewhere on a RER chassis. Oh, there it is. Actually, there it is. Well, yeah, there it is. So let's just take a look quickly, since this is the end of the video. There's the V3 shocks. Where are we here? V3 shocks, and I believe these are the V1s right there. I believe that's V1s. Anyone in the comments can verify this, but I believe those are the version 1s. Yes, I got... My stand is like stabbing me in the stomach. This is a D-like RER. Regardless, yeah, it has Overdose shocks on it. These look like the version 1s. I might be wrong, but you can see the differences, that the top cap is sealed, top cap is open, that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure these are the V1s. But yes, people can correct me. What's the bottom look like, just so you know? There it is. So this is a standard Overdose aluminum shock versus the HGV1, which I'm sure it is, and the V3. So that was neat. Yeah, that happened to be right there, that D-like RER, just right perfectly there. So these shocks I rebuilt a while ago, but I'm going to redo them again because I was goofing around with oil and I may have screwed up the one O-ring in it. So maybe I'll buy a rebuild kit or something and go from there. But yeah, that's that. So thank you for watching, and more videos to come, of course. I got to do Constructor's Digest on this car and a couple other cars, and yeah, so stay tuned. I'm gonna keep grinding away, and thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye bye.